Hello and welcome to video number 5, and we're going to talk about your web hosting. And the big question is your web hosting slowing your WordPress site down? Because this is a big variable that a lot of times we just don't even think about. Did you know that most web hosting setups are just not made for WordPress? Especially if you're paying for a shared hosting web hosting plan, which my guess is that the majority of you are using shared hosting. Now, while it may be working now, and if you do have a WordPress site and it is running fast, as you begin to grow, as you begin to build your site out, it will slow things down. So let me explain. And to help you better understand this, I'm going to give you an analogy here. And imagine if you lived in a house, but instead of having 1 or 2 roommates, you now had 100 or 200 roommates. The more roommates you have, the more chaotic it becomes. And if you think about just adding 5 or 10 or 100, it becomes chaotic because now you have other people who may have other different intentions and will affect you in some way. Now, think about it deeper. You barely have any room, obviously. You don't have room in the fridge to store your food. If you have a few roommates that are causing problems, what happens? Well, if you think about it, it often spreads to everybody else, right? If somebody decides, hey, let's go have a party, everybody's going to have a party. Everybody's going to jump in. Now, as silly as this sounds, this is what shared hosting is like. Now, on the flip side, you might have heard of a dedicated server. A dedicated server, they tend to cost a lot more money, about $150 to $200 per month, but it's kind of like owning your house. And instead of having 100 roommates or even 2, you own that house. It's on your own rules. And whatever happens in that house happens in that house. But it's usually well worth it, that amount of money, because you don't have to worry about others trying to mess up your life. Now, most of you will not be able to afford $150 to $200 a month, especially if you're starting out as a small business. So the next best thing is what we call a VPS, or virtual private server in short. Now, let me give you an analogy. This is like living in an apartment, right? With your own room. So you've got a big apartment or a big server, and the apartment is split up into individual rooms. So you have your own room within the whole apartment housing. That's what a VPS, or virtual private server, is. Now, whatever happens in your own room affects your room. If you drop a plate, if you drop some milk, if something bad happens in your room, you get a flood, then it floods. Now, you might be thinking, well, if I flood, won't it affect the other rooms? Yeah, it might be, but in a real virtual private server, it's basically like having a house where whatever somebody affects you in the other apartment, like maybe below you or above you, they're not going to affect you, right? So if they crash their server, they crash their website, that will not affect you. And that's the beauty of a VPS, or a virtual private server. So in other words, what others do in that room doesn't affect you. Now, that said, not all VPSs are created equal either. In fact, there are a lot of web hosting companies out there that fully understand and specialize in WordPress. So the way they set it up, the way they set up the memory, the hard drives, the way they set up the software, it's optimized for WordPress. It's kind of like going to a cardiologist for your heart problems versus a general practitioner. So the general practitioner, they may understand a little bit about your heart and how to help you, but the cardiologist is really going to know how to help you. So you're going to a specialized web host essentially to get hosted because they understand your needs. Specifically, they understand WordPress and how it operates. So that's why I say a lot of VPSs out there are not made for WordPress. And therefore, even if you get a VPS in general, you might find that your site does not run fast. But if you find a WordPress specialized web hosting company, you'll find that your WordPress site will actually run fast because they understand what affects what. They've actually essentially taken all these variables and made it easier for you to make sure that your site is running fast. So let's discuss a few places that would be great for running your WordPress site. So what you're looking for is managed WordPress hosting. The first one that we recommend is called wpengine.com, and they specialize in WordPress. Now, one thing I will say is whenever you look at the pricing will cost a little bit more than a usual web host sometimes, but that's because they specialize inside WordPress. So when you get an account with them, they will set it up so that it is WordPress friendly. And like I said, most virtual private servers or dedicated servers are not really made for WordPress. So wpengine.com is a good one. The next one is called wpxhosting.com. And one thing to note is I would definitely not recommend places like hostgator.com. There are other places out there that say they're WordPress hosting, but these two definitely we've heard really, really good things about from numerous people. And we've actually taken a lot of sites off of HostGator for our clients and moved it elsewhere. Even though a lot of these web hosting companies will say that they are WordPress friendly, a lot of times that's kind of like a general practitioner and you're having a heart problem and you're just going to them. And they're saying, well, we could offer you some advice for your heart. But in reality, like I said, you want to go to a specialist. And these web hosting companies specialize in WordPress. So definitely can recommend these two for your WordPress site.